My sister-in-law smiled when the lawyer said my name wasn't included in the inheritance. My mother-in-law leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume and whispered, "Now you finally know your place." My husband didn't defend me. He just stared at the table. Then the lawyer rested his hand on a sealed envelope and said, "There is one final page, and it changes how the rest of this estate will be distributed." My name is Emily Hayes. I'm 35, and for 7 years I worked at Hayes Manufacturing, the packaging company my father-in-law, Richard, built into a business supporting 83 employees. I wasn't born into the Hayes family. According to Margaret, my mother-in-law, that meant I could never truly belong to it. She rarely called me her daughter-in-law. I was always Daniel's wife, as if my name and everything I had done were temporary. Daniel's sister, Vanessa, was even less subtle. Whenever company decisions came up at dinner, she would smile and say, "Let's keep this between the actual family." The strange part was that neither Vanessa nor Daniel knew the company the way I did. I joined as a financial analyst 2 years after marrying Daniel, and eventually became director of operations. When Richard's health began failing, he depended on me to keep the company moving. I brought reports to his house, handled calls from the hospital, and knew which suppliers, machines, and customer accounts needed attention. Daniel told people he was helping his father transition the business, but mostly avoided the office. Vanessa kept collecting a salary as brand director, despite rarely showing up. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Richard was sick. Daniel was scared. Margaret had always been controlling, and Vanessa had spent her whole life being told she was special. I thought patience would eventually make them see me as family. Instead, it taught them how much I would tolerate. At Richard's 68th birthday dinner, he credited me for saving a 3-year customer contract that protected 24 jobs. Margaret laughed. "She works there. That's what employees are paid to do." Vanessa added, "Dad built the company. Emily just keeps spreadsheets." Daniel gave me an apologetic look but said nothing. That became his pattern. He rarely attacked me himself. He simply left me alone when they did. A year later, the company lost 2 major clients within the same quarter. Cash flow became so tight that our bank warned us the payroll account might not clear. Richard was recovering from surgery. Daniel said he couldn't deal with another crisis. Vanessa was in Florida for what she called a brand development retreat. I negotiated a credit line, reduced waste, and persuaded 2 suppliers to extend our payment terms. It still wasn't enough. On a Thursday afternoon, our controller told me we were $72,000 short, with 83 paychecks due the next morning. I transferred the money from my personal investment account. It was most of my savings. Richard signed an acknowledgement promising repayment when the company stabilized. When Daniel found out, he hugged me and said, "You saved us." Margaret's reaction was different. "You should have discussed it with the family first." I remember staring at her, waiting for the gratitude that never came. 3 months later, the company recovered. The payroll loan remained unpaid because Richard wanted to keep more cash in reserve. I agreed. I trusted him. What I didn't know was that Daniel and Vanessa had already started discussing what would happen after he died. 2 weeks before Richard passed away, Daniel came home carrying a blue folder. He placed it on the kitchen counter and said, "I need you to sign a few restructuring papers." "What restructuring?" "Just housekeeping. Dad's attorney wants everything clean in case he has another health emergency." He flipped quickly to the signature line. Daniel hated paperwork. If he was rushing me, someone else had told him exactly what to do. I read the first page, then the second. Halfway through the document, one paragraph tightened my stomach. It said I was voluntarily giving up any present or future claim connected to company ownership, voting rights, unpaid compensation, loans, or marital interest. I looked at Daniel. Why would routine paperwork mention my loan? His jaw shifted. It's standard legal language. Then I'll have my own attorney review it. His voice sharpened. Emily, Vanessa already signed hers. Why do you always make simple things difficult? That sentence hurt more than it should have. Not because he was angry, but because he sounded like Margaret. I didn't sign. The next morning, I emailed a copy to my accountant, Priya, who called me within 20 minutes. Do not sign this, she said. It's not housekeeping. It's a waiver. I asked whether Daniel could have misunderstood it. Priya paused before answering. Maybe, but someone understood it very well when they drafted it. Richard died 11 days later. The week after the funeral, we met at the office of Richard's estate attorney, Martin Cole. Margaret sat beside Vanessa. Daniel sat next to me, but he felt far away. Martin began with the personal property. Margaret received the family home and its contents. Daniel and Vanessa were named equal beneficiaries of 2 commercial properties and several investment accounts. Richard left smaller gifts to his grandchildren, a local heart foundation, and 6 longtime employees. My name did not appear. I hadn't expected money, but hearing myself erased after everything I had done still hurt. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and smiled. I guess Dad remembered who his real family was. Margaret touched my arm with 2 fingers. Now you finally know your place. I turned toward Daniel. He rubbed his wedding ring with his thumb and stared at the grain of the table. He always did that when he was hiding something. That was the moment I knew. He wasn't surprised. He had known I would be left out of the main will, and he had let me walk into that room unprepared. Before I could speak, Margaret pointed toward a sealed envelope beside Martin's legal pad. What is that? Martin folded his hands. An amendment Richard executed 6 weeks before his death. Margaret's face tightened. While he was medicated? Richard's physician evaluated him that morning and documented that he had full decision-making capacity. 2 independent witnesses were present. No beneficiary attended the meeting. Vanessa looked at me. She put him up to this. Martin shook his head. Emily did not know the meeting occurred. Daniel's shoulders rose slightly, then fell. Martin noticed. So did I. He opened the envelope. The amendment did not give me the house, the investments, or the commercial properties. It gave me control of Hayes Manufacturing. Richard had transferred 51% of the company's voting shares into a trust created for my benefit and named me the sole voting trustee. Daniel and Vanessa each received 19%. The remaining 11% was divided between senior management and an employee ownership plan. Vanessa pushed her chair back. That's impossible. Dad said the company would stay with his children. Martin looked at her evenly. It has remained with the people he believed would protect it. My mind went first to the practical meaning. 51% meant I could appoint directors, block a sale, approve major transactions, and choose company leadership. Margaret turned on me. You knew. No, I said. I didn't. She has to be lying. Martin slid a signed statement across the table. Richard anticipated that accusation. The statement explained that during Richard's last 18 months, Daniel avoided operational meetings, Vanessa collected a salary while missing most of her work, and Margaret repeatedly pushed for a sale. Richard listed dates and records, including the supplier agreements, credit line, and employee benefits I had protected. Then Martin read the part about the $72,000. Richard ordered the estate to repay me with interest. My throat tightened, but the next sentence broke something open inside me. Emily did not protect this company because she expected to own it. That is precisely why I trust her to own it. Margaret stopped interrupting. Daniel still hadn't looked at me. I thought the controlling shares were the final surprise. They weren't. Richard's statement said Daniel had discovered a draft of the amendment on his desk. After learning that I might receive control, Daniel contacted Richard's corporate attorney and tried to convince him to cancel it. When Richard refused, Daniel brought me the waiver. Martin placed the unsigned copy on the table. Daniel finally spoke. I was protecting the family from a lawsuit. I looked at him. Why didn't you tell me? He opened his mouth, but Vanessa answered for him. Because you would have made it about yourself. Martin removed another document from the envelope. Ms. Hayes, the company's preliminary audit recovered an email you sent from your corporate account. Vanessa's confidence disappeared. Martin read it aloud. Get her signature before Dad changes anything else. Once she signs, she can't interfere with the sale. I looked from Vanessa to Daniel. What sale? Daniel whispered. Emily. What sale? Martin explained that Richard had ordered an independent review after learning that Daniel and Vanessa were communicating with a competitor. The audit found draft agreements to sell Hayes Manufacturing for $4.8 million, despite an independent valuation near $8 million. The proposed buyer was represented by Daniel's former business partner. Then Martin revealed why Daniel had been pushing for speed. Daniel had personally guaranteed several failed property investments. He owed more than $310,000, and 2 lenders were preparing to demand payment. A quick sale would have cleared his debts before the board discovered them. Vanessa had already placed a deposit on a luxury home using the inheritance she expected. Margaret supported the sale because she preferred cash and resented my influence over Richard. Daniel leaned forward. I never stole from the company. No one has accused you of theft, Martin said. But the undisclosed negotiations, your financial conflict, and the attempt to secure Emily's waiver require review by the board and the independent auditor. Suddenly, every insult made sense. They hadn't only wanted me outside the family, they needed me outside the decision. Martin turned to the final page. Daniel and Vanessa's company shares and cash distributions would remain in trust for 12 months. To receive them, they had to cooperate with the audit, disclose conflicts, accept my voting authority, and stop interfering with company transactions. If either of them violated those conditions, the company shares and that person's trust would transfer to the employee ownership plan. Vanessa stood up. I'll challenge this. You have that right, Martin said. But Richard's capacity was independently documented. The amendment was properly witnessed, and the company trust contains a limited no-contest provision. You should speak with separate counsel before taking action. Margaret looked at Daniel. Tell him this is unacceptable. For the first time that day, Daniel looked at me. There was no anger in his face, only fear. Not fear of losing me, fear that I finally understood him. Everyone expected me to use my new authority immediately. Vanessa seemed ready for me to fire her on the spot. Margaret began accusing me of turning Richard against his children. I didn't raise my voice. The audit continues, I said. An independent board will oversee it. No one is being punished today. and no one is being protected because of their last name. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You've wanted this for years. No, I said. I wanted a family. This is just the moment I stopped confusing access with belonging. 2 weeks later, the new board suspended Daniel from executive decisions while the audit continued. He remained employed in a supervised, non-executive role because the review found poor judgment and undisclosed conflicts, but no evidence that he had taken company money. Vanessa was offered a real position with defined responsibilities and quarterly performance reviews. She refused. Instead, she hired an attorney, challenged the amendment, and contacted the competitor again, trying to revive the sale behind the board's back. That second contact violated the trust condition. After a formal review and written notice, her 19% transferred to the employee ownership plan. Margaret kept the family home and her personal inheritance, but she lost what mattered most to her: control over everyone else. Daniel eventually told me the truth. He said he knew I deserved to lead the company. He also knew his mother would blame him if I gained power, his sister would turn against him, and his debts would become public. So you chose them, I said. He shook his head. I panicked. No, panic lasts a moment. You brought me papers, lied about them, and sat beside me while your mother humiliated me. That was a series of choices. He asked for another chance. I didn't file for divorce that day, but I didn't go home with him either. I moved into an apartment near the company and told him our marriage would require more than apologies. He entered financial counseling, disclosed every debt, and started therapy. Whether we survive is still something I'm deciding, this time based on what is healthy for me. 6 months after the will reading, Hayes Manufacturing was stable. We kept all 83 jobs, renewed the client contract Vanessa and Daniel had nearly sold away, and issued the first profit-sharing payments in company history. The estate repaid my $72,000 with interest. I used part of it to create an emergency employee fund, so no one person would ever again have to risk her life savings to protect payroll. People ask whether inheriting control felt like revenge. It didn't. I protected the company, the employees, and every relative willing to follow honest rules. The real consequence was that they could no longer benefit from my silence while treating me as disposable. For 9 years, I thought being accepted meant proving how useful, loyal, and forgiving I could be. Richard's final page taught me something his family never understood. A place at someone's table means very little when they expect you to earn it by shrinking yourself. They removed my name because they believed that would remove my power. But real family isn't decided by whose blood you share or whose will contains your name. It's revealed by what you protect when nobody has promised you a reward.